Happy Wednesday, writers. Today for writing workshop, you're going to need your pencil and your writing notebook. Go ahead and open back up to yesterday's lesson where we were asked to write a paragraph plan based on a prompt. So you were given the prompt, what is the hardest job in the world? You were asked to copy down Mrs. Ling's plan for the writing of the paragraph using what we call the Oreo format. So in the Oreo format, we started with a topic or our focus for the opinion, answering the prompt. We then were given 3 reasons with further explanations or examples. And then in the end, our conclusion was a rewriting in a different way of the original topic sentence. Today, we're going to be taking our plan and changing it from a plan format to an actual paragraph response. So we're going to turn our pages to the next available page. So we're going to turn to page 27. And we're going to then turn to the table of contents to make sure we record today's activity. So number 27 is going to be called Paragraph Writing. And then we're going to put hardest job so we can keep our prompt focus. So hardest job. And remember, this is not you writing your own personal ideas. This is writing based on what Mrs. Ling is writing in her own for you to have a copy of. So we're going to turn back to page 27. Remember, at any point you may pause the video, get yourself caught up, and then push play to continue. So we said this is called paragraph writing. We're going to write it at the top. Dash hardest job. And this is just the topic from our prompt from yesterday that we're going to use. So today we're going to be using the format from our plan to start developing a paragraph. And a paragraph is going to be a complex response in answering our prompt from yesterday. So we're going to go ahead and flip back, and we always start with our introduction. And our introduction already had restated part of the question to make sure that we are staying focused on the correct topic. When we rewrite our topic on the next side, we need to remember that any paragraph always needs to start with a capital letter, and it has to show that we've indented. And when we indent, we have to use our thumb to show the correct spacing. So usually I put the side of my thumb to the red margin line, and that way I know that I should not begin before the edge of my other side of my thumb. So I'm going to go ahead and write the first word, in, and then when we look back, we're going to rewrite the exact same wording. So in my opinion, the hardest job in the world is being a teacher. So in my opinion, and this is the expectation to record exactly what I have in your own handwriting. You need to get in the practice of being able to write with a lot of time on your hands. So this is building up your endurance. So make sure that you are doing exactly what I've asked you to do. So in my opinion, the hardest job in the world is, and let's make sure we have the right wording, is being a teacher. And remember, this is not your answer. These are Mrs. Ling's words. So we have gone ahead and rewritten the topic that includes our opinion based on the prompt. The next part of our paragraph is to move into our 3 reasons and examples. So we need to write our sentences going through our information or our support. So we're going to need a transitional phrase or word to get us started, and then we'll go over the reason of paperwork, and then takes up a lot of time. So I'm using that idea, and I'm going to start with the next sentence. And remember, this does not need to be indented. This is exactly in the same flow of the same first paragraph. The first reason, comma, I think this is because of all the paperwork I have to complete. Period. So I've given my first reason, but now I need to do the explanation or the elaboration of this first reason. So our elaboration or our extension takes up a lot of time. So in this next sentence, I need to focus on this is taking up a lot of time. So I'm going to start with another capital. This takes up a lot of time. I could be spending with my students or family. So with this extended explanation or elaboration, it could be an example. You need to remember it is a capital at the beginning of the sentence. It has a punctuation mark at the end. But if you notice, my entire paragraph is fitting between my two red margin lines. I never write in this little section or columns on the side. That way it's contained and it's nice and neat, and it'll fit where I need it to fit. So far we've written the topic, we've written the first reason, including a transitional word or phrase, and we have the elaboration or our explanation. Next, we need to go into the second reason. So when we look back, our second reason is the lack of resources. So when we look at lack of resources, we're going to come up with another sentence that starts with a transition. So I can say, another reason teaching is tough is because of the lack of resources you're given. Period. So we had a transition. Another reason teaching is tough is because of the lack of resources you're given. Now we look back at the explanation or elaboration, and it's because most of the resources, they cost a lot of money. So schools are not given a lot of money to begin with. So we do not have the funding from our county or our state. So we have to look elsewhere. And usually teachers are the ones that provide that for our classrooms instead. So we're going to go ahead and write that explanation. So we're going to start with a capital in order to make a classroom welcoming and comfortable. You have to spend a lot of money to purchase all the things you need. Period. So in my explanation of why teaching is tough, we said it's because of the lack of resources you're given. And in order to make a classroom welcoming and comfortable, you have to spend a lot of money to purchase all the things you need. So when you come into Mrs. Ling's classroom, you'll see that Mr. Ling has built this fabulous and elaborate loft for my readers to sit in during independent reading. We have comfortable chairs all throughout that are places to sit when we are able to get up and move from our desks. There are pillows, there's curtains, there's books, there's so many different wonderful materials and items that are in our classrooms that were not given to any teacher when they have a classroom. All of those extra things that are within a classroom are purchased by the teacher. So this is just another idea of why teaching is tough, because we want to make sure that our students are given certain things to have a welcoming environment. So teachers oftentimes will have to foot the bill. So now we're moving on to our third reason why teaching is tough. And we said there can be a lot of children. So we're going to start with a transition again. We can say, lastly, it is hard to be a teacher because you sometimes have a lot of students, period. Then we need to further explain why that is a challenge. And so our explanation is going to focus on the limited time to get to know them. And we also said about the space. So we're going to then explain this makes it challenging because it doesn't allow you a lot of one-on-one time with each student to get to know them and then we will say one-on-one time is important because it allows you an opportunity to know who your students are, comma, what they care about, comma, and how they learn, period. So far we focused on the topic, which is including the information from the prompt. We've included the 3 different reasons that start with a transitional word or phrase. We then add an elaboration sentence, which is an example or an extension to our reasons that we were giving our reader. And now we have to finally kind of sum it up by giving the closing sentence. So we've already written a closing sentence. So being a teacher is one of the hardest but most rewarding jobs in my opinion. So we're going to go ahead and write that. Being a teacher is one of the, and we said one of the hardest but most rewarding jobs, and then the last few words is in my opinion. The last thing we're going to do today is we're going to code the different aspects of our plan within our paragraph. So there's certain components that as a teacher or someone who is going to be grading your paragraphs and then turns into an essay, we're looking for very specific things. And that's why it's important to plan first and then use your plan in writing your response. So we're going to be using a few different colored crayons. So you're going to need your crayon box. I would like you to go ahead and get out your yellow, a red, a blue, and then a green. These are going to help us underline and kind of mark the important aspects of your paragraph today. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to mark that we have indented the first sentence of our paragraph, because that lets our reader know that this is a new thought or a new response. So we used our thumb in the beginning to show that we have this space. So I want you to go ahead and use your yellow, and I want you to go ahead and draw a star in that space. You should be able to draw a star in that allotment of space. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to find where we have our introduction and our closing. Now with our introduction and closing, we're going to in the future then also add a hook and a zinger to make them even more solid of an introduction and a conclusion. But for right now, we were just introducing our topic and rewording it in our conclusion. So with your red crayon, you're going to go back and look at the 2 cookies of your Oreo planning. That is the first statement and the last statement. So I'm going to use my red, but before you use your red, we're checking that we have the components of a complete sentence as well. So we're going to box the capital at the beginning of the sentence. Then we're going to underline the remaining part of the introduction. When you get to the end of that sentence, I want you to also box, using the same color, your punctuation to indicate that this is a complete sentence. We're going to then jump down to the bottom where we have the conclusion. And once again, we're going to look for the capital letter that begins our complete sentence and box it. Then use your red crayon to underline the remaining part of the conclusion. And then at the end, I want you to box your punctuation to show that this is a complete sentence. Then you may put your red crayon down. The next components that we're going to identify are the 3 reasons. So when we look for our reasons, we need to look for the first sentence that introduces why our topic was addressed the way it was. So I'm going to box the word reason because this is a good keyword that's going to help me identify the reasons. I then am going to box the capital that begins a sentence and underline the remaining part of the sentence. When you're done underlining the reason sentence, you're going to end by looking for the punctuation that concludes that sentence and boxing it. Then we're going to skip the next sentence knowing that this is our elaboration or explanation of the first reason. When we get to our second reason, once again, I'm going to do the same work. I'm going to box the word reason to show that this is my next supporting sentence. I'm going to look at the beginning of that sentence to look for the capital letter. Then underline the sentence to indicate that this is our second supporting sentence. And when you get to the end of that sentence, once again, box the punctuation. We have one reason indicated, second reason, and so we're going to jump down to the last one. This last one, we did not state the word reason, but I see my transitional word, which also will indicate that this is a third point. So I'm going to box it first. Then I'm going to just kind of individualize that first letter to show the capital. And then I'm going to use my crayon to go ahead and underline the remaining part of the third reason. When you get to the end of the sentence, once again, you need to go ahead and box the punctuation to indicate complete sentence. So now we have identified the introduction and the conclusion and the 3 reasons. Now we're going to use the green to do the same type of work, but indicating where the elaboration or the explanation of our reasons is. So when I see my first reason, the next sentence should be my explanation of that first reason. So I'm going to box the capital letter and then use the green to finish underlining that explanation. When you're done with the sentence, go ahead and box the punctuation to indicate that sentence is finished. Then you should be at your second reason, which means the following sentence is another supporting sentence that explains the second reason. So I'm going to box the capital to indicate the beginning of a complete sentence, then underline the remaining part of this explanation. When I'm done, I'm going to then box the punctuation to indicate the end of the complete sentence. Then our final reason has been given. And for this one, if you recall when we were writing, we actually had 2 sentences that were explaining what the third reason was. So we're going to box the beginning of the first explanation, underline. Then box the punctuation to show the ending of the first complete sentence. Then once again, box the beginning letter of the next complete sentence and underline the remaining part of the explanation. This is important for you to do as we are first starting off developing our focused paragraphs, because it allows you to know that you have the correct components. And when we take our FSA writing test this year, you will be expected to have very specific components in your response. And then the final thing we needed to do was to box the punctuation. So as we begin and as we continue, once we're done writing, you're going to be asked to go back and color code, because it'll help train your eye to look for the ideas that you should have within your response. So today you were asked to follow along and write down everything that Mrs. Ling has written down about our hardest job on teaching. We used our planning sheet and then developed complete sentences to write a complete thought with 3 supporting ideas, and then we were able to explain those ideas to show that this is something we have thought about. When you're done writing, take a picture of your color-coded essay and then submit today's lesson.